Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so my title is Climate Change and the Magnetic Field. Of course, we're talking about Earth's magnetic field. So ever since the 1960s, the Earth climate reports have taken a major role in brainwashing society. We all know this. All the reports since then have been edited according to a very specific set of desired circumstances that are explained to society as advancement in our supposed evolution. It is no secret, nor is it a wonder, that all this began simultaneous with so-called modern space exploration. Society has been weaned off believing Almighty God of the Bible and trained how to be their own gods, very simply put. And we've often talked about the Williamsburg Charter. It solidified the brainwashing in every school in the world. East and West, didn't matter where you went to school, every school was going to teach evolution. It flooded everybody, all the children, with the lie of Darwinian organic evolution. Remember, there is no third option. It's either that or God created us. Those are the only two options. And when you contemplate that, you'll find that that's exactly so. So according to current estimates, the age of the Earth is associated with about 15 billion years. And that's up from 4.5 billion from the 1970s. They keep changing it because they have no clue. The more the merrier is the idea there. And not only did this supposed evolution never happen, it could never happen under any set of circumstances.
That's right, man. That's right.
This is what people need to understand. The probability of it happening has been calculated to be in the realm of impossibility by those who are experts at probability studies. It takes about 12 zeros behind the number, behind the one, to be considered impossible. And there are many, many more than 12 in the calculations. I went through many of these in detail years ago through various Bible studies and stuff, so I'm not going to take the time to do it now because it would be here too long being a Sunday sermon. But there are simply too many zeros behind that makes even the outside chance of it happening totally impossible. In fact, about more than 30 years ago, Sir Frederick Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe, they're not professing Christians, and there were two of the many, but these are two of the big names, and I think at least Wickramasinghe is still alive. But two of the most highly regarded mathematicians and astrophysicists who have noted more than 30 years ago that the chance of evolution having happened is like a tornado going through a junkyard at one end and coming out the other, having constructed a flying 747 in the process. That's how they gave the chance of evolution. So if that could be done by a random tornado going through a random junkyard, then and only then is evolution possible. And of course we know it's totally impossible. It's never going to happen. Right. It never happened and never will happen. So the whole narrative is most absurd in its totality. It actually insults human intelligence. That's what it does. Yeah. Now the math also doesn't support evolution, and the true numbers calculated correctly don't lie. There's so many things I don't understand about this, things that seem incredible to me, but I know they're true because people are working at them with math, and the math is always bore out the truth. That's what it is. And we need to accept that too. But instead, this idiotic, mindless bunch of trash that nevertheless is peddled as science and accepted by a wantonly godless world, that's what's out there. They even have TV shows, the Big Bang and so forth. And they make fun of the whole thing. Most people know it's trash. They really know it's trash. But they're sitting on a fence that doesn't exist. They're wobbling back and forth because they don't want to give it up to God, because that means admitting that you're a sinner. But Paul called these things fables and science, that is knowledge, falsely so called. 1 Timothy 1:4, 4:7, 6:20, 2 Timothy 4:4, Titus 1:4, 2 Peter 1:16, these things are mentioned. So it's not that the Bible didn't say anything about this nonsense, it always did. So essentially people who end up in the lake of fire are there because they were stupid on purpose. To deny creation is denying the Creator, who is blessed forevermore. Amen. Hallelujah. Denying creation is the blindness that keeps one away from the truth of the need for the Savior. In a word, sin. They're denying sin. We're good, we just have a few bad apples in the bunch. And we can correct them by psychobabble, behavior control. That's what's taught, isn't it?
Yeah.
So accepting creation, though by itself not enough to be saved from eternal death, hell, and the grave, is, however, the necessary first step in coming to Christ Jesus, who not only saves the soul eternally, but is the creator of that soul. Hebrews 11:6 is very succinct in that one cannot please God, that is, come to him, without believing that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, not lazily, happenstance seek him, diligently. I got to have you. I got to know God. I got to know you. Who are you? What are you? Is it real? Is it not? I got to know. I found myself in that position 30 plus years ago, inching closer to 40, because he didn't answer me right away. It took some years, but I never quit because I knew there was something there. And the same thing with this. There was something to this that I read about, 20, maybe 18, 19, 20 years ago. Underlined it in the book that I'm going to share about later. It's awesome, and I'm just not coming back to it because I was looking something up in there, and it's like the Lord said, no, this is what it is. So you don't have to be convinced, but I'm convinced that this is this. Okay?
Oh.
So if one accepts the lie of evolution, one is obviously not seeking him. Therefore, no salvation is even possible. Think about that one. It's amazing how, on the one hand, people don't want to believe in a benevolent, almighty God because everyone instinctively knows that he has uncompromising standards to which none of us can live up to. Is anyone living up to his standards in here? Did yesterday? Not yesterday? How about this morning?
Never.
How about when you're sleeping?
No.
Exactly. Now, on the other hand, they don't want to accept Yeshua, the Savior, who obeyed the Father perfectly while on earth, thus qualifying you and me and everyone else who would come to believe to be accepted into heaven's eternal Zoe life. We only get in because of Christ.
That's right.
So what's all this have to do with climate change and the Earth's magnetic field? In short, everything. So I've come to wholeheartedly believe that the Earth's magnetic field is the reason for all that's physically going on with the Earth. Human life in general is blatantly blamed for what the world calls climate change. I want to make the distinction in all of our minds, just like with health and drugs and chemo and all this sort of thing, there's a difference between the actuality that we can see and the problems that do exist, like people get sick and die. Is there a problem with that one? No. But what the world then paints around that to make us think that they got the answer and it's about prevention and all this sort of thing, that's the problem. Of course, we know they used to call it global warming, but that phrase, of course, got old, as we know, and at least with most people. And it ceased to do the mental trick. It's all about a mental trick. Mental gymnastics, however silly, is what the world needs us to engage in. Well, isn't it possible? Well, it could be. Everything could be, I suppose. But give me something solid. Nail something down, and they can't do it. And so they make up fake reports and say, that's science. And you are bound to believe in it. So now with the whole new generation of people who basically know nothing except what's spoon-fed to them, and thus accept basically anything, the final generation of those who cannot be taken in the rapture is here. No doubt in my mind. I see it in my own family, sad to say. All were conditioned and indoctrinated from kindergarten, grade school, through college. You and I were too, even us who are in our 60s and beyond. This has been going on for a long time, but especially around World War I it started. That's why the two wars anyway, but it started at that era to really, really, really crank up. Now the generation I speak of, they're used to IT, AI. They are mask-wearing, jab-prepped. They are ripe for the picking much more than any generation before in human history. Think of that one. No one is so prepped to accept all the garbage that the world gives than this latest generation. And many of us can even are, the borders of us have been touched the same way. So each generation was brought successively closer and closer to godlessness, from trashing biblical truth to outright hatred of our Lord Jesus Christ. By the way, yesterday I came to town for class. Right there where I get on 28, where all that construction is, there was a trailer, and these 2 or 3 old ladies were passing out pies or cookies or something. A couple of 2 or 3 guys were sitting in chairs. And I do a double take, and there's a pentagram on the side of this little trailer, like a hot dog trailer you see at a fair kind of thing. And it said something about satanic society. And just out there in the open selling, having a bake sale, probably raising money or something, because they are admitted as a bona fide religion by our government and most governments in the world. Our military, they all say, you guys are bona fide, you're a religion. And it is true, they are a religion. And that's why Christianity has never been, is not now, and will never be a religion.
That's right.
It's a personal relationship between an individual and Jesus Christ. And that's a vast difference. Would you agree?
Yes.
So after the removal of the church, not one believer will nor can be left behind. Subsequently, all who are left behind have decided not to choose to believe the report of the Lord. That's what it is. A certain medical student relayed to me a few days ago via phone as to what we can expect in terms of medical treatment for virtually any ailments. And the subject was, I was asked about my BP and my carotid and all that recent stuff. And I told him, and he said, that's funny you say that, because we just had a lecture by the cardiologist. My class right now is in cardiology, and so this guy came around and he said the future of blood pressure medicine will be where the stuff goes into the body, and it's going to change the DNA to reproduce and change what it normally does in order to supposedly fight hypertension or high blood pressure. But all the other things it does or doesn't do isn't mentioned. It doesn't matter, because the object is to lower hypertension, lower blood pressure. So all the side effects that it surely has, like they all do, doesn't matter. This is what we need. We advertise that, we sell this. But more than that, all of them, in the end, whatever you got will be settled with injections or jabs. And this is already decided by the powers that be. This is a professor of cardiology, a guy who's been there, done that. He's opened up enough hearts and vessels, and he's telling these future students that are second year, I think, second year medical students, listen, when you guys get out of school, another 4, 5, 6 years, past your residency and all that, this is what you can expect, if not before. He ought to know what he's saying, because it came down the pike to him. He said, tell your students this. Yeah. Get them prepped already, you see? Indoctrination. It's already decided. So they got the results of all this, that they were after with the previous trial runs, utilizing all the various flu shots doled out over the last few decades, but especially with the COVID pandemic. That was the big test, the absolute big test.
Yeah.
Under the pretense of prevention, they already claim that it's every citizen's duty to get voluntarily jabbed in order to keep us all safe, warm and cozy going forward into Earth's glorious high-tech future, right? And this future is envisioned going successively further away from being human and embracing a hybrid form of existence. The last chapter in my book I wrote back in 2013 talks all about that. You need to look at it if you haven't, because it's a thumbnail of there's so much information out there, you have to spend all your life to do it. But that's a thumbnail sketch of what is going on, and that was, 15 almost years ago, or 10 years ago.
No.
And at the time I wrote it, it was already 10 years or so. That information was already at least 10 years old. Everybody with me?
Yes.
And they've been doing this since World War I, seriously, in labs all over the place. And remember, there are underground labs that are not public, as it were, yet they get millions and billions of dollars of funding from those that are public, universities, hospitals, things like that. So successfully splicing of human DNA strands to cause permanent change to the individual is already far along. The latest in BP pressure treatment is exactly that. In case of non-compliance, of course, it'll be forced, with the greatest push being towards the middle of the Great Tribulation. Thank God we'll long be gone by then. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing the start of the race, as it were. The gun's gone off. We're halfway down the track. In fact, we're 7/8 down the track. Okay? And also just ahead for human society is a universal paycheck for everyone. This is coming. They have no choice but to do this because the system is broke. It's all fake. Nothing has value, especially since they took the dollar off with Nixon in 1971. America couldn't pay its debts. He said, well, forget gold. It's all fake from now on. And you've heard of the petrodollar. They made a deal with OPEC, the Arab nations, and said every barrel of oil you sell, do it and denominate it in dollars, American dollars. And that's what everyone were forced to do, and that's what the BRICS nations and Russia and all them are fighting, and they're doing their own thing now, have been. They're absolutely. Do you know that America, while putting sanctions, this is a fact, America, while putting sanctions on Russia and China, are buying Russian oil?
Yes.
Doing it through India. Doing it through Malaysia. Billions of dollars worth. What's up with that? It's a plan, everybody. It's a plandemic. The reason society will like this, as the head of the economic forum said, World Economic Forum in Davos, you'll own nothing and you'll like it. First of all, we don't own anything anyways. Anything you pay tax on, your land, your car, even your clothing, your food that you buy, whatever it is, whatever you pay tax on, you don't really own. Nobody owns anything. We don't own the house we live in. And if your house is paid off, you still don't own it. Try not paying taxes for maybe 2 quarters, and the thing will be up for sale. Nothing you can do about it. You better pay your taxes for that thing. Somebody else is going to buy it. It's not yours. If it were really yours, they couldn't do it. They couldn't sell it. You understand? So we don't really own anything anyway. It's already been a joke. But it's going to get worse. See, when you own nothing, society will like it. The majority, because they've been brainwashed already. Own nothing, no real responsibility. Getting a regular income without actually having a meaningful career/job already sounds great to many. Those lazy and no vision of building a life, for the most part. All the 40-year-olds that are living with mom and dad and stuff like that, you know. Are there a few that are truly in need of that? Absolutely, there always are. Are there a few beggars in the street that really need it? Yeah, absolutely. But there's a whole bunch more that make it a business. They know that so many people will give so much per day if I stand in this corner long enough. There are guys who are making the equivalent of 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour just standing there begging. No taxes, no nothing to them. That's great. Another reason cashless society will do away with that. And another reason why they know these people will still be here. We got to get them off the streets somehow, at least to some extent. Therefore, everyone gets a paycheck. That's how this goes. It has to. See, that makes common sense, even though it's perverted. You understand what I'm saying? There's a common sense to the perversion, if you will. And of course, along with all this are the jabs for whatever ails you. Essentially, non-human willing slaves is what they are producing. It's happening right before our very eyes. The power of choice will be eliminated by virtue of being owned by the state. They'll point to, we clothe you, feed you, provide you with regular income, give you a host of the latest injections to prevent sickness and disease. Why wouldn't anyone want this? Books have been written by prominent scientists, true scientists, even decades ago, on the studied suspicion that diseases are coming to us from outer space, from outside our atmosphere. This ties right in with Ephesians 6. The powers we're fighting are not from this earth. They're not flesh and blood. Researcher Thomas Horn has testified that he believes that the comet the Bible calls wormwood will carry a virus that will affect mankind during the Great Tribulation, Revelation 8, 10 and 11. Because when that thing hits, the waters will turn bitter, that is poisonous. How would a comet just hitting do that? It couldn't, unless it had something associated like what he's saying. So he has a point. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but he has a point. You understand what I'm saying? Why would God even allow this thing to hit? That's how God is transmitting this. You guys want to jab? I'm going to jab you with a comet. I'm going to jab the whole earth that you've perverted with a comet. Oh, that gets into this even better. I haven't even started to begin. So I read about this, a couple of decades ago and even wove it into a preaching or two back then. But I kind of let it go. A quick little add-on here, just like I know you two will at least remember, you've probably been with us the longest, all the teachings that we did and the discussions we had in Bible study and such as to the Amero and the North American Union and all that. I thought it was taken off the table. At first I thought, well, they're just laying it down. Then I thought, nah, it's been too long, they're taking it off. We're talking the 80s when old man Bush was president. So we took it off the table. I, in my mind, took it off the table. They never took it off the table. It's happening. An estimated 100 million immigrants are needed to come to America to eliminate the southern and northern border. That's what they're doing. It's going to be Canada, United States, Mexico, the North American Union. That's what they're doing. And the Amero may still be in line as well before the mark because of the euro and all the BRICS nations, India, Russia, China, they all have their own currency. They're all working on this. So you're going to have these major centers. Now you have hundreds and hundreds of currencies, literally hundreds of currencies. And they're going to eliminate all that to have just 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, many. And then from that, of course, it'll go right to the mark. So how long would all that take? I don't know. But it's moving at a pretty good pace. So all of this has to do with heat and ferromagnetic materials of the Earth's center core. Not only is this the reason for all the drastic changes which have become evident, it is also better explains Peter's statement that the Earth will melt with fervent heat. It makes sense when I think of this and what's happening to it. Originally, I thought of this as real proof of the fact of a very young Earth, and it does that. And that's what this book talks about that I'm going to share about later, or share from later. The math figures simply don't lie. I can't get past the math. You can't get past 2 + 2 is 4. You can call it whatever you want, but it's still what it is. Okay? We need to really get that in our head. But, like everything else, there's always more to it than that, isn't there? We don't glean everything in the beginning. And now, to me, it all makes sense like never before. So this is a physical explanation of how, in time, the Lord holds it all together. So consider this. Let me go to my little map here real quick, and then I'll go back to that. We got all day, right?
Yeah.
So this represents creation timeline. This is intelligence. This is the creation point. The world would say Big Bang. The world would have us go this way. From nothing, we're here somewhere. World Wars 1 and 2, here somewhere. Okay, that's what the world would say. But God says, no. Hashem speaks, kaboom! The earth is created.
Yeah.
And the intelligence of Adam and Eve, let's put it about here. This is God himself, so let's put it about here. Everybody see where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. Okay? And ever since the fall, we've been going down.
Yeah.
Jesus gets born. This is the energy field that's doing this. This magnetic energy. Jesus gets born and it goes up. He gets crucified and it goes back down. This is provable mathematically. That's what blows my mind. Got this from Dr. Ball years and years ago. And we're down here somewhere. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Yeshua is the power source. Hebrews 1:3 and Hebrews 11:3. J.B. Phillips says Jesus is, quote, the upholding principle of all there is. He's talking physically all there is, besides everything else too, but we're talking physical. Listen, Jesus is the upholding principle of all there is.
Yeah.
The Living Bible says, and I like what they say, a lot of issues about that, but I like what they say on this one. He regulates the universe by his mighty power, or by the mighty power of his command, the spoken word. Hashem speaks. Woo! Boop, 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 boop. Mounts, remember, he was one of the foremost Greek experts. He says, Jesus is sustaining all there is by the word of his power. Oh, man, I'm telling you. That's, of course, Hebrews 1:3. Anyway, it makes sense to me, so that when he returns at the second coming, the rundown will stop. Why? Because the lion will lay down with the lamb. He's going to clean up the earth for the next 1,000 years, 7,000 about here, and it won't fall until we get to the end, and then it'll be burned up, like Peter says, chapter 2 Peter. It'll burn with fervent heat. Okay? All right. Now listen carefully. This gets technical. I had to go over this book like 1,000 times in the beginning, so it gets pretty technical. I need my glasses. Excusez-moi. I have help. Thank you very kindly. Man, am I smooth. See, this is the original graph. I got so many things on there. I got to study it all over again myself. I did this years and years ago. Okay, the magnetic field. This book is Unformed and Unfilled, a critique of the gap theory, which we also discussed at length years and years ago. But Weston Fields and Michael Heisel said, in his opinion, this is one of the best technical books to actually explain the trash that gap is, and I would agree. Okay, all right. So stay with me. There's a few pages here, but I'll be succinct and I'll enunciate the best I can. I'll skip some, of course. Are you ready?
Yes.
The magnetic field. Ow! One of the most astounding indications of a very young earth, and that's his whole point here, is very young earth, okay? But there are other things that I want us to get out of this. So one of the most astounding indications of a very young Earth is the Earth's magnetic field. A prominent creationist, Dr. Thomas G. Barnes, professor of physics at the University of Texas at El Paso, has done pioneer work in this field. And we first learned about him through Dr. Ball. His conclusions about the magnetic field bear heavily on two important considerations. First, the age of the Earth itself, and secondly, the value of radiocarbon dating as affected by the decrease in the magnetic field. This chapter discusses the field, or the first of these two. The evidence, description of the magnet. The strongest magnet on this planet is not one made by man. The Earth's own magnet is vastly stronger than any magnet ever designed by man. The present value of the Earth's magnetic moment, that's the quantity that denotes the strength of the magnet, is 80.1 with 20 zeros amp meter squared. Don't ask me any of that because I have no clue, but that's what it is. Even so, this magnet is much weaker now than it has been in ages past. Its strength is dying out. Its measured value in 1835 was 85.6 20 zeros. This means that the Earth magnet has lost 5.5 20 zeros ampere or amp meter squared of strength during the last 130 odd years. This was written in 1970s. Okay. All right, it gets better. Heat and ferromagnetic material, just so we can understand what this really is. Not all materials are ferromagnetic or capable of being strongly magnetized. Only the chemical elements, iron, nickel, cobalt, gadolinium, and certain alloys can be strongly magnetized. It is therefore possible to construct artificial magnets out of these materials. However, the magnetization of all of these materials is destroyed if the temperature is raised high enough. The temperature at which the magnification of a material is destroyed is called the Curie temperature. There is no magnetization in the materials at temperatures above Curie temperature. The Curie temperature of iron is 750 degrees Celsius, so no magnets of iron exist at this or higher temperatures. The Earth's temperature increases with depth below the surface. At a depth of about 25 kilometers, the temperature has already reached or exceeded the Curie temperature of ferromagnetic materials. The temperature at greater depth exceeds the Curie temperature of all materials in the Earth, and so there are no magnetized materials at these depths. That's the point. The point here is that you cannot say the magnetic field is due to all these elements that are in the Earth because it's too hot. Okay, everybody get that? All right. But 25 kilometers is only a small fraction of the total depth of the Earth radius being 6,370 kilometers. Hence, it is only possible to have natural magnetization in a relatively thin crust of the Earth. Surface samples and core samples out of boreholes indicate that if the Earth crust is taken as a whole, its material is not very strongly magnetized. Therefore, magnetized materials cannot be the source of the Earth's magnetic field. So what is it? If it's not magnetized materials, what is the source? Because we have a definite source. There is not nearly enough naturally magnetized ore in the Earth to account for the Earth's total magnetic field, so one must look for another kind of source for the Earth's main magnetic field. It is not due to magnetic materials. Electromagnets. I know you have to let this rattle in your head, but just get the gist of it, please. In 1820, Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that an electric current affects a magnetic compass. Shortly afterwards, it was demonstrated that a magnet could be produced by an electric current flowing in a circle. It is now generally accepted that the Earth's magnetic field is produced by an electromagnet, powered by electric current circulating in the molten core of the Earth. Because of the immense temperature of the core of the Earth, none of that material can contribute to the magnetization of the magnet. Only the electric current can produce this magnet. I'm done. He said it is important to know that the earth magnet is an electromagnet because this means that the electric current must continue to flow or there will be no magnet. It cannot be a permanent phenomenon because electric current dissipates energy, which is heat loss, and there is a limited supply of energy available to it. So, a couple of theories have come out. One of them is the dynamo theory, and it's talking about well, I'll get to it here in a bit. You guys still with me?
Yeah.
Are you asleep?
Yes. No.
Are you learning something?
Yes.
And you should look into this further if you wanted to. Okay? It's very complicated, but it is what it is. All right, so the source of the current, one of the previously suggested but inadequate theories about the power source of the magnetic field is the dynamo theory. This theory suggests that there's a dynamo, that is an electric power generator, in the core of the earth. A much better theory, based upon the theoretical work of Lamb, is that there are free currents, a relic of an origin in the past, circulating inside the earth. It is these currents which produce the earth's magnetic field. They are freely decaying currents, and consequently the magnetic field is also freely decaying. See, this right here was calculated by extrapolating backwards in time from here. That's why this is a fact, because the math comes right on the money on it. All right. It is these currents which produce the Earth's magnetic field. They are freely decaying, so therefore the field is decaying. The confirmation of Lamb's theory, as Barnes points out, rests upon the observed decay of the Earth's magnetic field. We know this. It's been observed since 1835. Proponents of the dynamo theory are not willing to concede that the magnetic field is decaying, whereas Lamb's theory requires this decay and relates the decay rate to the conductivity and the size of the Earth's core. Observation of the decay. We're almost done. Are you with me?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes! Say, ow! Ow! Say, no one's doing that. Okay. Karl Gauss, the old German, invented a magnetometer with which to measure the absolute value of the magnetic field at various places around the Earth. He was then able to reduce these worldwide field measurements to one number, a number that represented the total strength of the Earth magnet, called the magnetic moment. This value was first recorded in 1835. That's why that's a starting point of all the mathematics. Over the past, he says 130 years, but it's now been about 180 years because this was done in 1970. Many observations have been made. I mean, this has been seen. And one fact is certain, the Earth's magnet is decaying at a remarkably rapid rate. Thus, Lamb's theory has nearly 130 years of real-time observation to substantiate it. This is a much longer period of real-time observation than can be claimed for other decay processes, such as that of radioactive substances. When they date things, they talk about, the radiocarbon-14 and all that. Too many assumptions. None of those dates are true. But this here can be substantiated. So he says, hence our knowledge of the source and behavior of the Earth's magnetic field rests on impeccable physics and extensive observational confirmation. The decay of the magnetic field is exponential. This type of decay is more easily understood in terms of its half-life, the time required for the value to decrease by a factor of half. The half-life of the Earth's magnetic moment is 1,400 years. This value was computed by applying the appropriate statistical analysis to all the available real-time data. And by the way, you go to the website, you can get all the actual numbers and everything that was done and so forth. Worldwide observation, etc., etc. This 14-year half-life is a surprisingly short half-life from a historical point of view. It means that every 1,400 years, the Earth's magnet loses half of its strength that it had at the beginning of that period. Thus, in 7,000 years, during the 5 during which 5 half-life intervals of 1,400 years each would have taken place, the Earth's magnetic field would decay to 1/32nd of its initial value. It is interesting to note, that will be about here. It is interesting to note that today, for instance, the strength of the magnetic field is about 37% of what it was at the time of Christ. Went up, came back down, because this is only because Christ lived. Basically, you could just write a line there, okay, as far as it going down. Everybody get that? And then he talks about it being used as a clock and so on. And this is something, I better read it because it just makes more sense. Almost done here. Oh, just 15 more pages. No, just 4 more pages. Because the magnetic moment is decaying at a known rate, it can be used as a clock for geologic timing. The spring of the clock is the energy contained in the magnetic field. It is possible to use the magnetic field as an indicator for the Earth's age by computing its past strength and the heat associated with that strength. The heat. And then postulating an upper limit for the strength and the heat. At time an electric current, or any time an electric current flows in a conductor, some heating is produced. Yeah! This heating is a loss in the total power, though. It's like a break, what a resistor does. Thus, the total heating of an electrical current can be computed from its strength. If the initial value of the magnetic field were known, then the age of the Earth could be computed. But since we do not know the initial value, the fields bearing on this age of the Earth must be deduced from other considerations. It is helpful to compare the magnitude of astronomical magnetic fields. The magnetic field for a magnetic star with its thermonuclear source is about 100 Gauss. One would certainly not expect the magnetic field of a planet to be as large as that of a magnetic star, so it is reasonable to assume that the field was never that large. Bear with me here. This puts a probable upper limit on the initial value of the Earth's magnetic field of less than 100 Gauss. By applying this premise about the probable limit on the value of the magnetic field, it can be seen on Table 3, which is this table right here. I'll do that in a little bit. That the Earth's magnetic field could not have originated before 8,000 BC. Thus, the Earth's magnetic field is less than 10,000 years old. And he talks about some other things. And then the reversal hypothesis. This is what Mike brought up the other day when we talked about this. We take the liberty of quoting Barnes' discussion of the reversal hypothesis in its entirety so that the reader may benefit from its full impact. That's why I'm doing this in its entirety, so you all get a full impact. This basically, in 1970, the Earth's magnetic field in terms of Gauss was 0.62. 6,000 years ago, it was 35. If the Earth were 1 million years old, 1 million BC, it will be 6 times 10 to the 219th power. There's no way. It's not going to work. All right, that's just a little sample here. So the real-time data covering all of the universe, or the worldwide observations of the Earth's magnetic field intensity reduced by advanced mathematical techniques and recorded in government publications. This is 1835 and forward, not this trash we have today, okay? Although real people are still doing it. They provide ample evidence of decay of the Earth's magnetic field and the consequent conclusion that the Earth's magnetic field is young. However, young is compared to billions of years. However, the traditionalist ignores these data and substitutes a reversal hypothesis in order to retain his geologic age chronology, billions of years ago. In this reversal hypothesis, he assumes that the Earth's magnetic field has a reverse many times at various times in the very remote past for unknown reasons. Well, that's a good assumption. Oh, this is what it probably did, and we don't know why. And they call this science nowadays. So in this reversal hypothesis, did that. He does not use the actual data on the magnetic field of the Earth, but reads local remnant magnetization in rocks, attempting to make his case on the basis of the orientation of this magnetization in the rocks. However, the reversal hypothesis is in trouble because the data on magnetization in the rocks give no conclusive evidence of reversals in the Earth's magnetic field. And he got all the, if you want to know all the numbers and everything, you can go to that place. And chronology and the reversal hypothesis acknowledges great weaknesses in interpreting the complex magnetic data from rocks. In his informative book, The Earth's Core and Geomagnetism, Jacobs gives numerous illustrations of inconsistencies in the rock data. This guy believes in this, but says, yeah, these are all consistencies, but he won't come to Christ. He won't believe in creation. He believes this, even though they're inconsistent. Think about that. See, this is the mindset. And this is, quite a while ago. So to rectify these inconsistencies, at least 4 physiochemical processes are said to be able to cause self-reversals of the magnetization in the rocks. Processes that are unrelated to the Earth's magnetic field. So it's not even related to the issue. Everybody see that? I know it's hard. I had to go, I've read this I don't know how many times, so that puts me just a half a millimeter in front of y'all. But those processes are needed by the traditionalists to make the non-conforming data fit the reversal hypothesis. Jacob warns, the same guy that believes this, quote, such results show that one must be cautious about interpreting all reversals as due to a field reversal, and the problem of deciding which reverse rocks indicate a reversal of the field may in some cases be extremely difficult. To prove that a reverse rock sample has been magnetized by a reversal of the Earth's field, it is necessary to show that it cannot have been reversed by a physiochemical process. And this is virtually impossible, he says. Yet he still believes that. How do you do that? I'd at least be on a fence on that one, you know what I'm saying? All right, origin of the magnet. We're almost not done. No, we are. It's just this page and that page. Are you ready?
Yes.
Y'all don't need to eat anyway. We're all blessed. Look at us. Origin of the magnet. There's no reason to believe that the Earth's magnetic field did not originate at the time of the Earth creation. It is doubtful that it was wound up at some geologic time after its origin. If one assumes an origin as recent as 5000 BC, the value of the magnetic moment would have been at least 2.6 times 10 to the 24 ampere meter squared. No planet is precisely thought to have a magnet of that strength. It appears that nothing short of an origin of the Earth could initiate such a strong magnet in this planet. This evaluation of the data is much closer to the age suggested by biblical chronology than the 4.5 billion years, or nowadays 15 billion years, by most contemporary geologists and geochronologists. Another indication about the youth of the magnetic field is the amount of heat that would have been associated with it in only 20,000 BC. At that time, the strength of the field would have been 1.8 Tesla, which is 18,000 Gauss, stronger than the field between the pole pieces of the most powerful radar magnets. It is almost inconceivable that the Earth could have cohered with the Joule heat that would have been associated with the currents producing such a strong field. Even now, the currents in the core of the Earth can be shown to exceed 1 billion amps. But if the field surface of the Earth were 1.8 Tesla, instead of its 3.1 times 10 to the minus fifth Tesla, the currents in the core of the Earth would be more than 50,000 times greater than they are now. Joule heating in the Earth is proportional to the square of the current. This means that the Joule heating in the core of the Earth would have been 250 million times greater than it is now, a phenomenal amount of heating. Thus, from this fact, it is seen that the origin of the Earth's magnetic moment must have been less than 20,000 years ago. Conclusion, it's just a short one. It has been shown that from at least 2 different standpoints, the magnetic field indicates a very young age for the Earth. in terms of the heat produced by the field, an upper limit of about 20,000 years of the age of the earth, assuming that the field began at the creation of the earth, can be legitimately postulated. On the basis of the electrical strength of the magnetic field as compared to other astronomical bodies, including magnetic stars, an upper limit for the age of the earth of 10,000 years is imposed. That's an upper limit. This gives us a value much nearer the order of magnitude suggested by biblical chronology than that proposed by most contemporary scientists. And in our estimation, it is a strong indication of recent creation for which evolutionary scientists have no satisfactory answer. Pleading field reversal seems to be begging the question, as even those who believe in them admit the evidence is open to other interpretations, whereas for the past 130 years, the accumulated data all favor the decay theory. Yeah, it's entropy. God said it's all decaying, didn't he? That's why. There's much more, but I'm going to stop there. The point is, in my humble opinion, I am convinced that the physical reason and aspect of all of this stuff, whatever else it may produce and show us in the future, is because of this thing going down. It has to go down because Christ lifts it up by the power of his word. He's going to do it again here. He has to, because it's gone from here to here. He's going to lift it up to here again. And everyone's going to live under this. Perfect rule, perfect everything. The earth will produce. The earth is going to produce, and we don't need to modify corn in the way it's going on now. When you put a post in the ground, a wooden post, what happens to it after a while? It starts to decay. Why? Because the ground is trying to make more of itself. It's eating the thing, making a ground out of it. That's why when you burn it and stuff, keeps the bugs in the ground off before you put it in. You burn the surface off. Seems to be like a Klingon protection shield. But anyway, so for me, this is the answer to all this, no matter what is being said about it or who, what, when, where, and how, and all that. Because it is increasing, we have the increase of problems is because this thing is falling down. The earth has been falling down here. You had Timothy in this area being sick to the stomach all the time. Well, he didn't have any canned food. He didn't have any chemicals in his stuff. Why? Why was he sick all the time? What was his problem? Paul said, well, drink a little wine, not just water, to help alleviate that. And there were other people who were sick all the time. Sickness and disease began here and got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse because the energy field got... And that message, how many times have you heard me say, every blade of grass, every tree, every flower, and they're all touched by sin. That's why the earth moans and groans. Romans 8 or 8:20, whatever that is, 8:22 through 25. The earth groans with birth pangs of pain. When we're going to be released? When am I, the grass, going to be released? Or the animal, or the trees, and the birds and the bees? When are we going to be released? Because it's up to man getting right for them to be released. Until man gets right, they can't be released because man was made Lord over them. You see? So when man fell, they fell.
Yeah.
Woo! It all makes sense to me. You all need to chew on it. I understand that. I've been chewing on it for a couple of decades. And I let it go and it just come back. And I tell you what, the strength at which it came back to my head is what made me do this morning. And if anyone has another explanation that fits this better, I'll listen to it. But I believe that this is what it is. Anyway. All right. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for telling us the truth from day one. Laying it out in your word. You're not a man that you should lie. Thank you for that as well. You are completely trustworthy when everybody and everything else is not. Things change continuously, but you never change. And for that, we also thank you, because that makes us count on you. We're literally able to count on you fully and trust you fully because you do not change. If you loved me today and didn't tomorrow, I couldn't trust you. But you've demonstrated your love by sending your son. And as J.B. Phillips had said, that the Lord Jesus is the Father's unsentimental gift of love to the world. Wow. Thank you in Jesus' precious name. Forgive us all our sins. And again, I would lift up Lori and all those in Florida who are yours, that you would protect them, Lord, from this storm and wherever else they may live. In Jesus' name, amen.